This is the Rural Homelessness Podcast, where we discuss the important issues around rural homelessness, hear from those affected by it, and offer some solutions. Brought to you by the award-winning homelessness charity, the Ferry Project. Welcome to the Rural Homelessness Podcast. Well, hello and welcome to the Rural Homelessness Podcast. I'm your host, Matt McChlery. Thank you so much for joining us. Today we're going to be talking about the differences and similarities between urban and rural homelessness. And on today's show, I'm joined by Christina Isaac, who is the CEO of Just Homes Charity, and Keith Smith, the director of the Ferry Project. So let's welcome to the show Christina Isaac. Hello, Christina.
Hello.
And
Hi.
Keith Smith.
Hello. Hi.
And I guess our first question was, we're talking about rural homelessness and urban homelessness and sort of the similarities and differences that exist. What would you say from your context? I think, first of all, let's define the context for our listener. So let's start with you, Christina. Are you involved with urban homelessness or rural homelessness?
It's urban homelessness that I am involved with. Very much urban.
And what part of the world or city or town is that?
We operate out of Newham, which is one of the inner London boroughs and one with one of the highest number of deprivation incidents of homelessness, and also very low per capita income, low skills. And also, I think Newham is in UK the one which has the highest multinational population as well.
Right. Okay. That's interesting. So coming to you, Keith, then, if Christina is representing the urban view, I take it you representing the rural view for us today. Can you tell us a little bit about where you are in the world as well?
Yep. Okay. So yes, very much rural. So we're in North Cambridgeshire, a town called Wisbech, which is in the Fenland of Great Britain. So it's the flat country at the top of East Anglia. That's reclaimed land and farmland. So Wisbech itself is a small market town. Population is about 30,000, but the surrounding area. So the next town is 9 miles away. The next main town is 16 miles away. So that's Kings Lynn, and the nearest city is Peterborough, which is 24 miles away. So we have small urban centres, then big gaps to the next small urban centre. So it is very rural. There, Wisbech itself is surrounded by lovely green farmland, where at the moment it's very wet because of all the rain.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Just sets us in a bit of context for the rest of our discussion. So from either of your perspectives, really, what would you say are some of the toughest challenges you face as a charity in your setting?
So it's interesting. I was listening to Christina and she was talking about Newham and the deprivation indices in Newham. So Wisbech as well has very high deprivation indices. So nationally, we're in the top 10% for most deprived communities, and very similar types of things, very low income, because the economy locally is based around food and food prices. People want to keep food prices low. So we're all about food production and then going from the field into the can and into freezer and so on. So we have the largest chip factory in Europe and things like this in our area. But so as a charity then, one of the challenges we've got is that the next nearest homelessness organisation to us is actually 16 miles away. So we're covering a vast area of land, and within that land, homeless people can be anywhere in that situation. I mean, indeed, many of the homeless people we're supporting in our area don't want to be found because they've experienced being attacked or abused by yous or by others when they are found. So we find that our clients try and keep a very low profile wherever possible, but the living conditions they're in are very poor. And any services they try and access or seek support from are very spread. So we're still in a situation where there are villages that only have 4 buses a day. So there's virtually no public transport. There's no railway station in Wisbech, so you can't come and go by train. There's no dual carriageway coming into the town, so any transport into the town is very limited. So the people we've got are all on foot, moving around, and if they're told by the system to do something, they might have to travel quite significant distances to be able to go and do whatever it is they're being told to do. And there's no public transport to enable them to do that. So they and we face, I mean, the jargon is social isolation. We face the fact that, in a sense, we're in this on our own, and we've got to develop what we're going to develop by ourselves. The network of support is comparatively small. And, you know, as such, we have to come up with ideas and solutions ourselves. So that's, I'd say that was one of the biggest challenges, certainly starting up. And indeed, going forward, we've had to spend a lot of time building the networks to allow us to get the support we need, and indeed to access support for our clients.
And Christina, is that a similar picture for you, or are there vast differences?
It's For us, it is kind of the extreme opposite of what Keith would say. Like, we have Stratford International here, so people come in from everywhere. And traditionally, Newham is one of the poorest boroughs, and also being the east and cheapest in compared to other inner London boroughs. So you have a huge influx of people who are isolated and homeless, and getting coming and accumulating in Newham. When we used to do street crowns last year, almost, we used to have about 100 a night on the street, and out of it, about 60% were people who were there for the first 2 or 3 nights, and who were people who had newly arrived in the country. So in that sense, there's a huge number of people coming in. And for that very reason, we also have a large number of organizations who are trying to address homelessness, just please trying to make sure there's warm meal put in front of them. And it gets to the point, because there's just so many of people out there trying to do it, the lack of coordination between them. So if 2-3 charities are running soup runs on a particular night without coordination, these are hard-earned, collected money, and you come out and there's not enough people to have them. So coordinating between charities of what they do, what days they do, how do they complement their services, that is a huge challenge in our borough. And recently we have formed a group, so people who are kind of doing similar things then club together and try and save resources to make it go around more. So that is the reality on our part of the world. And I think when you talk about homelessness, the first thing we need to do to address is to provide accommodation. Finding affordable accommodation is one of the hardest challenges. There are charities that that buy properties and give it to homeless charities to use them as accommodation. But of all the ones that I know, because London property prices are so high, those models does not work in the London boroughs, where they might work very well in Manchester or Birmingham, or even cities like that. It will not work in Newham. So shortage of properties is probably huge, the biggest challenge. And then it is complemented, or it is more complicated by the fact that most of the low-skilled employment in London are fueled by people living in outer London boroughs, and especially in Newham. So you have a disproportionate balance of houses in multiple occupancy when compared to homeowners. So the pride of the local land will come, and you take care of properties and do things like that if you have homeowners. And when you have 6 and 7 people crammed into a 2-bedroom house, the situation becomes difficult. So to address this, the London boroughs have got a ban on having planning for any more HMOs. So if you have this huge influx of people into this borough, and if you have a ban on HMOs, then even if you find an affordable property, how do you get planning to get something up and running here? So yes, then it is complicated by it's people coming from different parts of the world that comes in. So the cultural beliefs and differences plays a huge part in how they engage with the Western community and how they respond to it. Then lack of transferable skills, or mostly language. If you have the language, almost everybody has innate skills that can be transferable. But if you don't know the language, then that becomes a barrier. So Newham in the London Borough is a hodgepodge of different kinds of issues.
Thank you.
And it's interesting. It's interesting, Matt, just to pick up on what Christian's saying, because over the last few years, so Wisbech then, because of the agricultural basis that it operates from, is used to bringing migrants, and originally it was from London and from other urban centres, but over the last 30, 40 years, it's been from Eastern Europe and other parts of the world to Wisbech to work on the land. So something like 40% of the jobs in Wisbech are living wage jobs, so the minimum wage that people can pay. But people can land in Wisbech and get a job within a matter of hours. So people arrive in Wisbech and will have a job working, say, on a farm or working in a factory very quickly, and they'll be able to source accommodation very often. They'll be able to source accommodation with people that are similar to themselves. So in Wisbech at the moment, we've actually got at least 17 different nationalities in a small market town, many of them from Eastern Europe. So over a third of the population of Wisbech is now Eastern European, from Latvia, from Bulgaria, Romania, Lithuania, Russia. They've all moved in.
Are you finding a lot of the people you encounter that sort of come through your doors as a homelessness charity are from these migrant communities, or is it still quite heavily sort of local people?
Okay, so pre-Brexit, what we found was people were coming in from different parts of Europe and would come in very ill prepared. Indeed, they were facing abuse. Wisbech was the first location where a modern-day slavery offence was committed and was actually taken to court. So we found various people abusing people by bringing them over, charging them very high prices for the privilege of bringing them to England, and then not supplying them with any sort of support or accommodation for that money, actually indebting them and trapping them in all forms of modern-day slavery. So at that time, the number of people that the homeless charity Ferry Project was supporting had a higher percentage. So a third of the population is Eastern European. We probably had half of our clients were Eastern European. Now, since Brexit, we've actually seen it go back to what you'd call the normal state of affairs, where a third of the population is Eastern European and a third of the people we support are Eastern European. So we find as many now indigenous Brits needing support, as well as any migrants coming into the area. And indeed, most of the Eastern Europeans that we're now seeing have been in here for quite a while, and what we're seeing is internal migration around Britain. So we're picking up people that have actually been to other parts of Britain and have moved here. So we're seeing a growth in our local Bulgarian population, but Bulgarians are moving from Britain rather than from Bulgaria.
So I've now been in this job for 25 years. And when we started, what we used to have was the children of people who were on second or third generation benefits, who were coming out homeless and coming in. And I think that was at the beginning of, I think before that there was, I am exported into this country, only came here 25 years ago, so I wouldn't really know what was there before. People came with an expectation that when you had turned 18, you were going to get a flat and you were going to get benefits, and that was how life was going to be. And we came in, or I started work in this area when that belief was being challenged because you didn't have flats coming in, and it was hostels you were coming into. So it was mostly ethnic people from this country, trying to move on from their parents who came through. And then that quickly changed into the second generation. The first generation of immigrants were very hardworking, and they made their mark, and then they taught their children as well. But it's come to the third generation. They got used to being in a good lifestyle, and then the parents and grandparents can't quite get an understanding of the grandchildren kind of generation, and a lot of the youngsters were being thrown out, and we were suddenly faced with all these 18, 19-year-olds who have very little domestic skills but very entitled uh, attitude coming through. So then you had that wave of it, and then you had this explosion of immigration coming from everywhere. So right now it is an absolute hodgepodge. You have people from every part of the world coming in, and moment there is Britain opens up its doors to refugees coming from anywhere, they filter through. And right now NAS accommodations are ending because a lot of people are being given status to remain in this country. So it's just, we are just inundated. And to say, I was looking at stats because this is the year end. Last year, we had 5 times the number of applications for the number of bed spaces we had. No, that is year before. And last year, we had 9.5 times the number of applications to the number of bed spaces. And that is in spite of having increased our bed spaces by 20%. So it's just crazy here right now.
Keith, would you say your capacity is similar? Are you facing similar demands to Christina, or is it different in the rural context?
So, well, yes. So at this precise moment, it's different. We support probably about 300 people a year. We've grown our capacity. So our capacity at the moment is just under 80 who we support at any one time and provide accommodation. So for us, those 80 beds, there are other organisations who do not support people off the streets, but who will provide accommodation. So similar to housing associations, who will take people that we move on. And at the moment in the area, the actual level of accommodation required is being met by the accommodation that's available. So the needs are there. We're not seeing the fact that there's a massive shortage of accommodation. What we are seeing is there's a shortage of move-on accommodation. So that's where our challenge is, that the number of homes where we can move our clients on once they've successfully gone through our programs are short. But certainly within ourselves, we've provided the accommodation that we need. We need to keep expanding. We expanded last year by 14 bed spaces, not quite the 20 you did. But so we're having to keep growing, but we are keeping pace. Whereas by the sound of it, Christina, you're not.
It's nearly impossible to keep pace. I've got one house now being refurbished that will bring in another 8 bedrooms, and I've already started looking at the new property because of the demands. But it's interesting what Keith said. Keith said that he's got 80 bed spaces and he's able to support 300. We have got a similar number, but I'm able to support just double that, half of what Keith is supporting. And that is basically because people are silting, because there's absolutely no move-on accommodation for. I'd like to move on someone between 16 to 24 months, but come 2 years, where am I supposed to turn someone off to? And if I do, they repeat the cycle because they don't know where to go. Because yesterday I was quite heartbroken because I met someone who had worked pretty hard he had moved out with a job, and he's back on the streets because he lost his job, and there's absolutely nowhere for him to go.
You mentioned having a number of beds and accommodation space, and then you're talking about support being wider than that. Could you just explain to us what that means? Because when I think of a homelessness charity, I think, okay, homelessness equals a bed or somewhere to sleep. What are these extra support elements that you're mentioning now as well? So if you could tell us, Christina, from your perspective in an urban area, what does that kind of extra support entail? And Keith as well, if yours is similar or different or additional to what Christina might be doing.
Okay. All right. So how I see it is to be able for anyone, including me or you, anyone, to be able to function normally, we need a place to stay, warmth and food. Those are like basic necessities of life. So and only then you can work with a person to go from here. So in our hostels, or we'd like to call them homes, what we do is when someone comes, we have a starter pack for them. So we try and make the rooms as nice as possible. So it's a warm, cozy feeling you come into. And then have we keep the number of people in each house small to around an average of 8 to 10. So it's a community feel that they can come into. And they get a starter pack. So when they come in, they get a set of cutleries, plates, things like that, and new bed sheets, pillowcases, duvet cases, everything. So it feels like, okay, I've come from a very difficult surroundings, but suddenly, hey, here are some tangible physical things that I can touch and feel that makes a difference. So that is a basic starter pack. But then if some people have come off the street, sometimes it's hard to sit in a room to have an interview with. So we keep a supply of basic clothing, shaving stuff, deodorants, body wash, everything. So first thing they do is go and take a shower before they come and sit with us. So that is kind of a starter situation that we have. Let's say 20% of our client groups belong to that situation where they need a shower before they can sit and have a conversation. But what that does is it suddenly lifts a person and makes him human and makes him give that self-confidence that, okay, I am at par with or equal to someone. Nobody can kind of now see through me to see my or the situations that I've been through. And then within our hostels, we provide free laundry facilities. That's a dryer and washing machine, because a dryer specifically because men specifically can't be bothered to go and put the clothes out to dry, and so it definitely is a washing machine. And then we give everyone about 10 soap pods in a month so they can do their washing, and so there's no excuse for not cleaning up, and it's sustainable. And then the other that we do is toilet rolls. And they leave me alone toilet rolls because in the early years, if they don't, nobody wants to buy toilet paper, so they'll stuff newspaper down the drain, and I am spending money spending for plumbing, and I decided that instead of that, I am going to supply toilet rolls, and that really helps with the basic hygiene. So you give them a start thing. And then the other thing that we do is we provide a free hot meal every evening, and the meals are of a good quality of such that our chefs, I'm very proud of my chefs, because food finishes like that. If you don't turn up within an hour, it is gone. So it is a good warm meal. And the reason why that is done is, if there is one warm meal going into a person, the likelihood of him going to drugs and alcohol drastically falls. When a person is on low income, the last thing they will spend money on is food, and then last thing they'll spend time on is cooking food. Whereas if there's one hot meal going into a person, my ability to work with them dramatically increases. So those are like, that's the basic support. Then the other thing is a lot of people have no idea how to maintain. If you're talking about homelessness and if you're talking about them moving on to somewhere, you need a basic domestic skills to be able to manage. So every resident here has to spend 2 hours of their time a week towards the running of the house. So they are on a rota to clean the common areas. They help the chef with the shopping. They work alongside the chef. So if someone from Nigeria wants to have, one of their cuisines, the chef will buy food from there and cook alongside that person. So the cooking skills, the cleaning skills, believe it or not, they'll sweep the floor before they've cleaned the worktop, and you'll wash the inside of the plate and not the outside of the plate. So all these kind of little things, how to use a vacuum cleaner, how to change a vacuum bag, how to identify between one that has a vacuum bag in it and not, those kind of things. We really spend some time equipping these people, so with a view of them being able to, when they do move on, they do know how to do that. And then sharing, the people that we work with, the 90 or 80% of them will be moving on to shared accommodation. So how do you respectfully share an accommodation where you have common kitchen facilities, common toilet facilities, things like that? So really try and work on that. And then the last but the least, not the least, is then support towards engaging with any kind of employment related training, language training, and employment. So that is like the spectrum of support we try to provide. Oh, one thing more. After COVID, there's a huge effort now that's put in to support people, especially the older ones, to engage with technology and be able to claim universal credits online, and how to operate a bank account remotely, and that really seems to make a difference.
Yeah. So Matt, we in Wisbeach, we do all that Christina's just done, but we've also got we've also got a significant proportion of people with health related problems. So many of the well, in fact, the vast majority of the clients who come to us will have a health issue. So 80% of our clients have mental health problems. And so we've got an embedded mental health worker in our service who actually will be supporting those individuals both to access medical treatment as required, but also be doing the first stage of assessment of people with mental health issues. We work very closely with a local GP surgery who actually come into the hostel where we're based, and will provide a type of GP practice service to individuals within the hostel, and that picks up some of their physical health issues. We see that. Alongside that, we also have various behavioural problems, and we support people. So we have trained counsellors, and we have various support from the staff to enable the clients to manage previous trauma. Now, one of the other significant things for us is the fact that because we are the service in the area, we have to meet the needs of a full range of client groups. So that means we have to meet the needs of women fleeing domestic violence, transgender people who've been ejected from their homes, people who are out of work, as I say, people with enduring mental health problems, people with some learning difficulties, men fleeing violent situations. So we get a massive spectrum, and so therefore the support work that we've got to do very often is around supporting them with managing the trauma that they've gone through that has led to their homelessness, and then helping them to move forward out of that situation. And we can't just rely on other services to do that, because there are no other services in our type of environment. We've actually created and brought people in to enable those services to take place within the supports that we're providing. So yes, so absolutely what Christina was saying, helping people to feel safe and secure and warm and well fed, and in a place where they can be open and honest and share and talk. But then we have to build on top all these additional higher level services, if you like, with health and other types of things to actually help them to move forward. And just like Christina, one of the most important things is obviously benefit support to help them get stable in their finances now. but also employment support to help them move forward. So it's interesting, Christina, when you were talking about the qualifications. So Wisbech is in the bottom 5 towns in the country for its level of qualification. And we find that people with qualifications leave Wisbech and will go to other places because there's no jobs for people with degrees or high qualifications. So many of the people we're supporting won't even have a GCSE or a qualification in their own country. Some of the people that we find coming from other countries are illiterate in their own language. So never mind illiterate in English, they're illiterate in Bulgarian if they're Bulgarian or in Lithuanian. So the locality seems to attract, because of the nature of the work, which is very physical and land-based, we seem to attract people with very low academic skills. And so quite a bit of our work is trying to support them to develop those skills to become job ready to move on as well. So, but there's a lot of similarities, a very significant amount of similarities between the work we do.
And in that sense, Keith has a much bigger challenge than we do. And because of where we are, and because of the need, and because of the sheer number of different organizations in the borough, we are able to focus a little bit more. So for our men's work, we focus on low-skilled, low support client groups, low to medium support client groups. So we do have mental health problems, but not severe to the sense that Keith would be working with, because there are other services we can refer them to if we find that these are beyond our ability. And then we also work with women with no recourse to public funds. That is before the refugee status. It's a lot through modern slavery route and escaped in some way or the other. So we do a specialist work in that category, and then we do what we do. So that is an advantage of being in a rural setting over that of Keith, because Keith has to be jack of many trades, where I can be a slightly more specialized.
And it's interesting, isn't it, Christina?
Yeah.
Because so we're seeing, in a sense, we've got to provide a comprehensive service because we've got to cover everyone. Whereas your numbers are so great, there's no chance at all that you could possibly cover everyone. You've got to provide. You're almost providing services just to try and stop the breach in the dam that's pouring all those people in. And we're in a different situation where we've got people who have significant issues, and we need to work with those significant issues to try and to help them move forward in their life. It's interesting how the urban and the rural have created those type of different spectrums, isn't it? Because it isn't naturally what you'd necessarily think, but that's the outcome of rural versus urban.
How do clients access your services, or if someone's finding out that they're going to be homeless, or if they've just landed, got off a plane and they've got nowhere to go? It's very difficult. There's not really, if in an airport, you don't really see a big poster saying, if you've got nowhere to stay, phone this number. Or, if your landlord sends you a letter saying, well, you've got until next week and then you're out. How do people know about your charities? How do people get put in touch with you? How can people access the support that you offer?
So in Wisbech, it's comparatively straightforward in the sense that all the agencies in the town know that we're the homelessness service. So therefore, if somebody goes to the police, or if they go to a doctor's surgery, if they go to the local council, even if they go to the local supermarket and say they're homeless, everybody will point them our way. They'll tell them where to go, and we'll point them in our direction. And let's face it, the town itself, its diameter is not huge. So somebody could walk, even if they had to walk from one side of the town to the other, it's still only probably about 5 miles. So they could walk to our services and they can come. So there's that. There's lots of word of mouth in our area. And obviously we're very much on social media. So if somebody was to Google in Wisbech homelessness services, we would come up and they would be able to find us quite quickly. So if they're using their phones, if they're talking to other people who they see, if they communicate with anyone, and indeed we have an outreach team as well. So if somebody ends up sleeping rough anywhere in the area, we have got people who are going out trying to find them, trying to bring them in, tell them that this service is available, this is where you can get support. So So we can communicate, and because the size of the town is manageable, we can get the information across that area pretty quickly. So half of our referrals are self-referrals. People just turn up to us and start sharing the difficulties or whatever. So and when we ask them, they'll say, "Oh, a friend told me. I looked on the internet. A policeman told me where to go. Whatever it was." So yeah, that's the way for our market town, which is a discrete entity in a sense.
Yeah, how does it work for you, Christina?
Yeah, it's kind of similar because we've been here for so long that almost, but it's just that the number of referring agencies are numerous. I think there is about 37 of referring, because I was just counting all where all referrals came up. That's why I'm coming up with 37 different places from which we've had referrals from. And then 20% of our referrals have been self-referrals. That is people who've known who's been through our services, word of mouth and like that. And then there's numerous agencies here who refer people up, and HPAS is the main one. So there are many directories here on which we are. So when a person presents themselves as homeless, then they put in an application form, and it kind of automatically comes to us. And then we have the self referral. So we all have a website on which you can put in an application form. It comes to us, and and we do a telephone interview, and we put people on a waiting list, and then every week we check our waiting list to see who's in and who's out. Yeah.
And that's interesting as well, Matt, because although we do have a waiting list, on the whole, if we find somebody homeless, we'll almost certainly have the ability to house them that day. So we can actually bring people into emergency accommodation. We've got 9 beds of emergency accommodation for people coming off the street. And although there are times when they're full, probably 50% of the time, if somebody was homeless today, we'd be able to get them accommodation today. And if they're homeless and tell us they're homeless and so on, we'd certainly expect to be accommodating them within a week. So that's what I mean by our the accommodation offer that we've got is sufficient to meet the need locally. We can actually get people off the street. Now, continuously people are becoming homeless for all sorts of reasons, but we've got the capacity at the minute to actually meet the need. And because our area is not particularly growing, so other parts of the country are growing, our area, there is not huge amounts of housing going up in our area. We can meet that throughput. As I say, the challenge we've got is where they go once you leave us, and Christina sounds like she's got similar things, but I think she's got much greater problems because our average stay, we can normally move somebody on within a year, whereas Christina was talking about
2
a year and
years,
a half, 2 years.
people on.
Yeah.
And
So we,
and we have a waiting list of between 15 to 20 on every given day, and people literally ring us who are on the waiting. Oh, you said I'm on the waiting list. How far up am I? And our answer is we only have a vacancy when someone moves out, and it's really sad. We really are overwhelmed.
So, given the different nature of the challenges that your organizations face in either the rural or the urban context, where would you hope your charity would be in about 5 years' time? What you, if you had a magic ball or a magic wand that you could possibly wave? What are some of the key things you would like to have improved or got better or whatever? Where do you see yourselves in about 5 years?
Can I say something else before that?
Yes, go
Before
on.
we go there, I think one of the biggest challenges is we are here assuming that we expand, and the government is going to pick up the bill for it, because the money for running this place basically comes from housing benefits, and we are not a commission service as opposed to Keith. So the funding for support we privately raise from other trusts. So that's an additional job that I have to keep the show on the ground. So the local authorities here are completely overwhelmed. So even if we can somehow, I'm taking a private mortgage through Charity Bank and buying these properties and putting so in a way aiding the local government to do that. But in spite of that, the local government's ability to come up with a sheer number of housing benefits payments that are due is it is limited. It's not a never-ending purse, and we know that. And when interest rates went up, my interest rates went up from 0.75% to 6.5. Oh my God, where is the difference coming from? We just pulled through and glad that it's stable now. It's not going up anymore. Do you know, the finance is a huge, huge issue. So ideal position in 5 years' time, there was some dramatic change in surroundings and people didn't need us would have been the most ideal outcome that we could have. But we are hoping, for my charity's perspective, I am hugely now reliant on mortgages, and with recent years instability in the market, you can see how unstable that can make a charity like mine. When interest rates goes up, your outputs goes up, but your housing benefit rates are not going to go up. So being stable and sustainable and not be tossed about by the market forces would be, which is what I am going to concentrate over the next 5 years, and increasing capacity on that basis. So that does mean having a balance between raising grants as opposed to taking mortgages, but also with everything have an element of self-help built in, and not prepared to not be wholly dependent on local councils and handouts almost. Because I would think 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the ideas of social enterprises were fledged, and a lot of us went into it, and Keith was in it and I was in it, and then suddenly it has gone out of fashion. So if I really hope that social enterprises will come back into the market. Two things, because it gives charities like us an ability to gain some of our own income. And then the other thing is gives an opportunity for our client groups to gain a skill and then move on from us. So, Keith briefly touched on the fact that keeping food prices low, keeping this low, keeping that low, and then you're basically eradicating local businesses. There is, what do we have in production in this country? Absolutely nothing. So I think, for people who are listening, buy locally, even if it's that 10p more expensive. If you're buying something from a social enterprise, you are maybe spending £10, 10 pence more on whatever you are doing, but help charities like us. Help us to deliver you a service and help us to earn our own living, because it is insustainable to expect the local councils or the central government to keep on producing money for this insatiable need of people who are turning up at our doors.
Some really good thoughts there. Thanks, Christina. Keith, what about you?
So just following on from where Christina is, she was mentioning about how social enterprises is going out at the minute, but for us that's not the case. So for instance, we're still being able to run social enterprise in our area. So we run a community centre, and that brings in some money for us to operate services. We've hire out some of our space. So whereas Christina's shorter space, actually in West Beach compared to Newham, house prices are very low. Rental prices are not that much lower actually, but the actual purchase price for property is significantly lower. So we were able to buy quite a big property when we bought our accommodation. So there's actually space. We've just created recently an art gallery in our property, and the art gallery is paying us money to rent space. So we're getting space from that. We have a cookery school, and that includes private cookery lessons for individuals, and they pay for those cookery lessons. and that actually brings money in. So we're still generating income from social enterprises. And absolutely what Christina was saying about if the listeners were prepared to engage with social enterprise and buy from those, that's a massive help, because as she says, it's all about self-help then. We're actually earning the income that will allow us to carry out the services
And
we're doing.
that is so much better than giving us a grant. Be a customer, work with us, help us to earn our own income.
Absolutely. And that's the ideal, isn't it? Because we want to be in control of our own destiny. We don't want to be, we don't want to teach, if you like. One of the things that certainly for Ferry all the way through, and my knowledge of Christina's organisation is the same, in a sense, we don't want to become the beggar on behalf of a homeless person. So we don't want to go around begging for money so the homeless person doesn't. We'd much rather model what we're trying to say to them, which is work, earn it. Go out and work and earn it. That's exactly what we want to do, which is why the social enterprise model is so important. So we will be looking certainly over the next 5 years to continue developing the social enterprises we've got, perhaps developing some new ones, and we are looking at some interesting ones. So one of the things I would love to see in the next 5 years would be an increase in dental services, because we cannot get our clients into a dentist at all. So less than 1%, less than 1% of our clients have got access to a dentist, and many of our clients end up at A&E and have to go through incredible pain at times before they can get dental surgery and dental treatment. So one of the things I'm actually starting to investigate is starting a dental social enterprise.
I was going to say that to you. It's very capital. I had looked at it. It's very capital intensive because of the equipment that is needed, but it's one of the most profitable you can have. And usually the practice manager is a partner in a dental practice. So if you can get two dentists and we become, as a charity, the practice manager providing the business, we can make a cut. I had actually done a business plan on that. And the building fell through, so I wasn't able to pull it through.
So here you go, Matt. We'll do a bit of joint working here. So Christina, you can send me a business plan. I've got the accommodation.
I still see NHS was supposed to give up a building, and we were going to have a nursery on the ground floor and a GP and a dental surgery on the further end of it. But at the last minute, they took the building back on. I shall see if I still got it. We had done plans and everything, but I'm not sure. I was just literally heartbroken because it was nearly 18 months work, Then after that,
yes, exactly.
Someone pulls the rug over from under your foot and you just feel like, okay, chuck this, had enough.
Well, you see, and this highlights perfectly the difference between rural and urban. So in the rural area, actually accessing the space, we can access the space. So we've got opportunities, we've got space, we can do that. What we haven't got is the services. So we have to create the service or encourage those services to be developed ourselves because the services aren't available. So currently, for example, in our community centre that we run, the NHS rents space off us to deliver the diabetes eye clinic. So they're actually using our building to deliver their services. And as I say, the local GP surgery comes into our building to deliver services to homeless people, where whatever situation those homeless people are in, they're meeting those needs. The mental health worker is based within our service, doing work with the various clients that we do. So we have the space for a dental surgery. What we can't find is a dentist that would work with us. That's right. So we're struggling to do that. So we've actually managed to find a semi-retired dentist who said he would be interested in working alongside us. And he's even got a plan of how we can get the equipment and so on. So that's why we're now developing it. And interestingly, I've shared it with our local health services, and they're all telling us, go for it. They would really be pleased if we developed a social enterprise dentist. So we'll see if we can if we can do that in the area.
It was an idea about 6 years ago.
Fine. Well, so we'll see what we can do. But so for us, it's about trying to get that comprehensive set of services that are unavailable if we're not around. And what we're starting to see is it's not just unavailable to homeless people, but it's unavailable to the community as well. So some of what we're trying to develop might start with supporting homeless people, but then it grows beyond that and actually starts to help the poorer in the community who are not homeless but in danger of becoming homeless, and gradually you try and start to influence the community as a whole. So if we're moving forward, it's that development of services and actually providing people with services which in general in cities are available, and yet in the rural area not.
And just to contrast the figures, 2012, we had a turnover of about 1.6 million for our social enterprises. And now it is under £100,000. And it's mainly went because of lack of premises. Because our warehouses, the land on which our warehouses were given planning permission for posh flats. So overnight it went. And if you want to access, and if you want local people to access services, you have to have a presence in the city where people are. And then it is the buildings that does the killing. We had a huge clothes collection and recycling business went because there was no sorting place, just had to close it. We started a plastic recycling, collecting secondhand hard plastics, baling it and sending to China. Warehouse went, business went. Furniture recycling, warehouse went, business went. So it's very hard.
Yes, and so just comparative to that, so our social enterprises would be, so 5 years ago, would be earning about 200,000. We're probably up to about 300,000 now. So it's on a lower level, but we're seeing gradual growth. Whereas Christina, yours is up and down. Yours was massively higher than ours, and then crashed and stuff like that. So yes, we don't tend to see the same swings. The massive variation that you're seeing.
Well, Christina and Keith, it's been a very interesting discussion. Really interesting to see some of the similarities and indeed the differences between homelessness and homelessness charities working in rural and urban areas. So Keith Smith from the Ferry Project and Christina Isaac from Just Homes, thank you so much for joining us here on the Rural Homelessness Podcast. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And thank you as well for listening, and do tune in again for another episode of the Rural Homelessness Podcast. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you for listening to the Rural Homelessness Podcast, brought to you by the Ferry Project. Visit our website on www.ferryproject.org.uk.